Can I start off by reading scripture here? Romans chapter 11. I'm talking to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I take pride in my ministry, and hope that I may somehow raise my own people to enviance and save some of them. For if their rejection brought reconciliation to the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? If the part of the dough is offered as first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, the Gentiles, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in amongst the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not consider yourself to be superior to those other branches. If you do, consider this. You do not support the root. The root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief. And you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but tremble. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Consider therefore the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that was wild by nature, and contrary to nature were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? So
that was amazing.
It was, and it's just kind of a touchstone to me that that Paul was very familiar with what it meant to graft one kind of tree onto another, and it's when you actually do it, the illustration's even more powerful. So,
What is the scripture reference again?
Romans 11, somewhere in Romans 11, something. And being a Gentile, I'm very grateful to be grafted in. So here's some handouts here. I've only printed 5 of them, so you have to share. But we're going to be learning one particular type of graft, which is a whip graft. There's many, many, many kinds of ways to graft one branch onto another. But so when you start, you'll need 2 things. You'll need a rootstock, and you'll need scion wood, which if you go to like the Peninsula Fruit Club grafting show, you can buy pieces. They'll look just like this, $2 a piece, and they've got hundreds of varieties of mostly apples and pears, but some other more exotic ones. Brandy?
In Burnt Ridge Nursery, they have scion wood too. That you
Okay.
Yes.
Where's that?
Is
it online or is it?
Well, you buy stuff online, but it's where a lot of us are buying because it's a grower, so they have a lot of that stuff. Rootstock and things like that.
Right, and so what you'll find is that it'll probably be sealed on the ends when you receive it, because what you don't want is for your scion wood to dry out. So they'll dip them in wax or in a sealer or something. Okay, that's good to know, because not everybody's going to be able to make it to that one particular event. So it's very important that you pick your scion wood carefully, because it'll take a few years for your little tree to grow up to the point where it's making fruit. And it might grow for another 100 years after that. So, it's not like pumpkins, where it's like, oh, I made a mistake. I should have plant it, and then next year you get to try again. This is going to be around for a while, so do your homework, and make sure you're really getting something you're going to be happy with. So getting right to it, so if you have a little tree, say that, and I know you guys have some that you think we might be able to get rootstock from. So basically, what you do is you you cut down your apple tree or whatever has a good rootstock. Now, I actually don't know what that means exactly. I'm just told that these particular ones, M35 is a real popular one around. I don't know why. It's either like disease resistant or it doesn't grow too tall. That's a big thing with rootstock is you can get ones that grow big, you can get ones that grow small, and you can graft, say a Macintosh onto any of the rootstocks. But the M35 is a dwarf.
It's a dwarf, not a semi-dwarf?
I actually don't know.
Okay. But it's not full size. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, dwarfs really are nice to work with because the full-size ones just grow so fast, and eventually you're up on a 30-foot ladder trying to pick. It's just nice to be able to just kind of reach up there and get most of your fruits. So you'll get a rootstock. So anyhow, you cut off your rootstock. I guess I lost track there. You cut off your rootstock, and what will happen is once the tree is cut off, it won't die. It will send out a lot of shoots around the bottom. Then you pile up dirt around those shoots, and they'll be like this. They'll just shoot right up. And by the next year, all of those little shoots are going to grow roots into that dirt, and then you'll just go in, dig those guys up, and every one of those is its own standalone tree. So you've got one like that, Nancy?
Yeah, but we didn't get dirt around it.
Oh, well, next year.
Next year. But yeah, and we can show you on the way out.
Yeah.
It was real interesting. I just thought it was dead when you cut it down, and it didn't.
Right,
It's got
right.
probably 20 at least.
Yeah.
They're about this tall.
Okay. And then you have new trees, but on this rootstock, the stock that doesn't produce apples that are particularly desirable. Just, they're probably small and sour, and nobody really wants them, but you can go and you have your pick. This book has some examples of apples that you can look at.
So this
starts
is
here.
for any tree that you want to use?
Well, some trees graft better than others. And for instance, a fig tree, you generally don't bother to graft because it roots itself very easily, and its roots are good. You don't have to have special disease resistant. It grows on its own roots very well. But yeah, most trees, it has to be like for like. You have to have like a pear apple family has to be in that family. A stone fruit like cherry, plum, apricot, they have to be in the same family in order to get along. Otherwise, but yeah.
Awesome. So we have a plum tree out there that's not very, well, it's getting old, and so it wasn't very productive last year, but nothing was. So we could get the rootstock for plum, a dwarf one,
Yep.
and take graftings off of that.
Yes, absolutely. Make your own trees. Yes. Yep. And especially if you know it's a good plum and you like the fruit, yeah, preserve. That's kind of how I got started myself 30 fellow I know who lives in Belfair, he knew that my neighbor had a king apple tree. King is an heirloom. You're really familiar with the king apple?
Big apples.
Yeah, a nice, big, flavorful heirloom apple that you cannot buy in stores. And
They make really
and
good cider. They make really good cider.
oh, do they? Okay, okay. And so he went ahead and got just one branch off of that thing. He did a bud graft, which is different than what I'm showing you here, where you just take a single bud, you just make a slit in the bark, you stick it in there, tape it up, and it works. And he has king apples on his trees, and I just thought that was really cool.
That is
So, yeah, so. Yeah, and that's one of the fun things is also finding the old varieties that grandma used to have, and it's like, oh, this is the way it used to be. It wasn't all red delicious, you know.
really red delicious.
Yeah. So once you got your rootstock, you'll cut it off at some point, and you'll want to find a scion wood that's as close as possible to exactly the same diameter. Fortunately, since it's tapered, you can just kind of run it up and down until you get it at about the right height. Okay, and then what you'll have is so I'm cutting this off at the height, and then you want to count 3 buds up and cut it off again, because if you're greedy and you say, oh, I want more branches than that, which I do, what can happen is they can overtax this joint, because it has difficulty. The moisture comes up through the wood core, and it just has difficulty supplying enough, because it's been completely severed and then reattached, and it's just like, how am I going to find my way up into this? It's to me, it's a miracle that it does. And so if you have, these guys are all thirsty, all 3 of them. So if you have too much growth going on, it's going to wither, and the graft will fail.
3's a good number.
3 is a good number. I have succeeded with 5 before, so I'm not recommending that, but it can work.
So you cut off the scion wood or the stalk?
Oh, well, you cut off the stalk at the height you want. It'll just be a little wispy thing. You can't graft onto a little wispy thing. It needs to be, you can't graft onto this.
Size of your pinky or something.
Right. This is about a good size, smaller than your pinky, definitely. Pencil size is more what you're looking for. I have seen a lot smaller than this, and a little bit bigger. This is a little bit on the bigger side, actually. So you cut it off where it's a good beefy size, and then you cut your scion wood to match the diameter of the root stock, and then cut the top off to get 3 buds. Then you're going to make, if you can see from this, you're going to make a cut to make kind of an oval shape. You're just going to make a slanting cut here. Just get this one out. So, which is always a little tricky, but the idea is you want the and by the way, utility knife works great. You can get actual pruning knives that are completely different shape. I don't have one. You can also get pruning, grafting tools, which will you stick it into the hole and you pull the lever and bingo, it makes a kind of a dovetail joint, not quite like that, but it makes a really nice little graft, and then you put on the other one, pull the trigger, and they fit together perfectly. Those are cool too. I don't have one of those either, so that is a great way to do it if you can. So the idea now, also, you would never do this indoors because you don't want this wood to dry out. In fact, it seems to work better in the rain where it's always getting wet. So I always plan for a rainy day when I'm grafting. So trying to get it pretty much smooth, level, and then yeah, and at a nice angle. It's about a 4-to-1 ratio. Go ahead and look at that. I'll make. Oh, I guess I can't remember which one I was. Where's my 3 one? Oh, there it is. Yeah. I don't know if that's the one or not. Oh. No. Hmm. Yeah. Well, that should work. So do the exact same shape on the other one. You hold them up. It's actually, that's not the right size. Okay. We'll do this one. So the reason you want it the same size is because, like I say, the moisture comes up through the wood, which is in the center, but the nutrients and the growth of primarily the growth of connecting tissue, which is the important thing, comes from the layer just under the bark, the little green layer, cambium layer, and that has to match up with the cambium layer on your rootstock. Mm-hmm. So you get them, you look at them together, and you say, yeah, that's about as close as I can get to exactly the same. So then hold them up next to each other, lay them over each other, and say, yeah, is that really? Yeah, it actually looks pretty darn good. So then and also you're making sure that they're nice and flat, so you're not seeing gaps in between there. So, which I totally see gaps. So I'm going to smooth this out just a little bit. For this demonstration, I wouldn't have to do this.
Using that knife.
Beg your pardon?
You're very practiced at using that knife.
Yes. It is a skill, but it's not hard.
And then you've got to cut that off. It's like, oh.
Well, it is wood, it's not metal, so
Yes.
easy to trim.
It's easy to trim, and you're using young wood, very supple, not hard. So, And one last little trim here on the end, and I think we're good to go. Okay, so now we're saying much better, not much of a gap there at all. So what we will end up binding this with electrician's tape. This antique photo that illustration you guys have is done with string. And then they would put wax or something like that on it, resin, to seal it. Electrician's tape is great. You'll use a thinner type. You don't want the inch or 3/4 inch electrician's tape because you want to get it nice and stretched out, and it's just easier to work with this thin stuff. I don't even know how wide it is. It's thinner than the stuff you get at the auto shops. So the next step is you just make one little slit down there, like you'll see on that picture. You'll make an identical slit on each of them. You start up about, you go up about 2/3 of the way, and you just go down. Now, you should wear a glove on this hand because you end up cutting directly toward yourself. In fact, again, there's a special like just a finger glove you can get, grafters use. Don't have one of those. So
One of those.
a lot of stuff I don't have. Yeah.
This is something that
But-
I should never do.
But it's
I'd end up in the ER.
it's been very successful, even though
I'm not going to. I'm just saying in my.
I don't have all of the prescribed tools. So now I'm doing the same thing on this one, about the same height. And going down till it gets to about 1/3 of the way down. So I'm going from 2/3 to 1/3. And then you just take those two pieces, and this is just a little bit tricky because what you're having to do is get this one. Now normally, if this is a live tree, I would never touch this part because it's the plant does not want the salts and oils that are on my fingers. But for this illustration, this part needs to bend up, and this part needs to bend down, so it opens up that little tiny gap. But since you can't use your fingers, what you're having to do is kind of put some pressure on both. So I'm actually putting quite a bit of force on there, which is fine. And I'm
Should you wear disposable gloves?
beg your pardon?
Should you wear disposable gloves, like latex gloves?
No. Well, if you're using a knife, you should wear leather gloves, so you don't slice your
But then
fingers.
you're not getting any.
Oh yes.
oils.
It's theoretically you could do that. Never try. Just make a point of not touching it. But yes, that's probably would be a good practice. So, yep. This guy is not. He's not wanting to stretch out. There we go. Okay. So now, just kind of shove her in there until it lines up just as much of that bark is lining up on both sides, so that when it finally grafts together, you have as much bark as possible. Now, it's not actually necessary to get all of the cambium in contact. In fact, with a lot of grafts, you only do about half. For instance, you can graft onto a giant, like if your rootstock got too big, there are grafts that just go onto one side of it, and that's fine. As long as there's some cambium in contact, it will survive and and continue to grow, and it'll all heal over, and it'll be great.
So what have you grafted here?
This is thundercloud plum, which is a flowering plum. It doesn't produce many plums, but the flowers are amazing. And I've got a whole bucket of them outside. And if you take those and put them in water, it's already budding. So in a couple weeks, you'll have flowers. If so, feel free to take some home if you want. It's otherwise not a great tree. The payments have some in their yard, and they're really good when they're young, but they within 15 or 20 years they start to get old and tired, and they start breaking and getting disease, and so I would not be super prone to making more of them, although I actually have made one more of mine, because mine is about 30 years old, and it's pretty done, and we really like it in the springtime. It's just so it's just completely covered with pink flowers. So
Does it bloom before the flowering cherries?
is it what?
Does it bloom before the flowering cherry trees?
It's pretty early. I don't know. I think it might be around the same time. I'm not 100% sure.
It's a mason bee tree.
Is what?
It's what the mason bees get to those ones.
Yes. Yeah. Mason bees is another good subject. Yes. Again, because it doesn't. Maybe if we had more mason bees, maybe I'd get more fruit off the thunderclouds. But they're just small, sparse. Yeah. But if every one of those bloomed, man, it would be loaded. So once you've done that, you've done the hard part, and then you just want to go ahead and wrap her up with electrician's tape. Now, some people will also put a layer of wax tape. You can buy tape that basically comes in a roll like this. Wax, it's just wax, and you just wrap it around. That will completely hermetically seal it. But I've had great success doing this. My success rate is about 75%, which I'm pretty pleased with. It is a traumatic thing to do to a tree, to a plant. So I'm not that surprised when it says, I'm not happy with how this branch is doing. I'm going to cut it off. And
Reject the influence.
yes, and you will see that on your trees. There's a reason why you see dead branches on your trees. Is because the tree has decided this branch is just not being productive, and the tree will cut off its supply to that branch. Say, yeah, you're not a very good. And that's exactly what happens to these guys. Is the tree says, you're not super successful here. We'll let somebody else have the food. So what I'm doing here is I'm stretching this tape out to about 1.5 times its original length. Wrapping around, boy, it's really easy when it's not on a tree. So you can turn it. Normally, you're trying to do this sort of thing, but but the illustration's even easier. And then go back down. So I did one layer, overlapping by just a tiny amount, just enough to make sure it is overlapped. And then once you got the graft and the tape on there, that sign-on is on there solid. It's, wind, bird lands on it, it's not going anywhere. And you want to make sure it goes above and below enough so that you are sealing in the juices of the tree. And for that one, that's enough. Sometimes I'll do 3, but in this case 2 is enough. So now I always break it by pulling it, because that gives it a little extra stretch, and then that's it. Now you can't see what I've actually done. So
Used to be you're a tree surgeon, but you should be a surgeon.
yes, when I looked up grafting, I wanted to get an illustration, and it did show how to graft tendons, and it's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I'll do trees. And yeah, so I brought some extra tools if anybody wants to practice doing the cut, and we can, we can. Unfortunately, I didn't, like I said, I didn't bring any gloves, so can't guarantee you're not going to slice yourself. But you're welcome to give her a try. And then after like about midsummer or so, if it worked, you'll find the scion wood. It's just budding and growing. And you got healthy leaves on it, and at that point you can start peeling back the tape. And what you'll see underneath is these big old calluses all the way around that joint area, and then you'll know, yeah, it totally worked, and that's always a nice thing. And you should take the tape off before the next growing season, because the tape is quite tight, and it can restrict its ability to grow properly. But when you finally do take it off, you'll see that seam there, and even years later, you'll be able to see on your tree, you're going to see a whip shape mark where the root, the root is, and then the scion wood, and it might be 2-3 inches around, and it's like that's the grafting. And another thing you'll oftentimes observe is the say you're grafting onto a dwarf, the rootstock can actually be quite small, and then this thing is like bulging out because it wants to grow. But,
So if you use the wax that you talked about, tape,
yeah, you put that on top of
you-
this.
On top of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Now I learned most of what I know from Peninsula Fruit Club, and they actually do that. Typically, the people that do a lot of grafting, I mean, they do hundreds and hundreds of grafts, and they will use the wax tape. They'll also sometimes actually warm it, so they'll put like heat tape, like the stuff that you put on your pipes to keep them from freezing. They'll put that around it because they want to encourage the graft to start growing and the juices to start flowing. If you do it early in the season and it just sits there for a long time, they say it gets tired, and then when the juice finally starts flowing, it's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm so. Oh, and when you've cut your bud off, your scion wood off at that 3 buds up, I only got 2 now on this one, but that's enough. Actually, 2 is plenty. Even 1 is fine. It'll still go great. But you'll want to take and seal the end of it. So generally, just any kind of paint. You can just paint over it. You're good to go. And that again keeps your tree juices from evaporating out, this guy's going to have a deficit of moisture. So anything you can do to help it retain its moisture.
The same line of when a tree gets an alley
and you go in and you spray it or you seal
Yes,
it. So
yes. Yeah, that generally is also for preventing infections.
Yeah.
So, for small stuff, you generally don't need to do that, but for this, you definitely do, because not for the infection, because you can get bugs, you can get the fungus, that kind of thing. But it's going to dry out and it's going to die if you don't, or much more likely to if you don't give it a little artificial sealer.
So if we were going to use our apple tree shoots
Yeah.
as scion instead of rootstock, we could get a dwarf rootstock, right? And
Yes.
use the sprouts to make small trees.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
so where's that burnt?
Right here, I was
Yeah, I was
looking
just
at
gonna
the,
say, yeah.
so here you go, yes, I was
No,
looking at the
no,
rootstock,
you got it.
yeah.
Yeah, because they sell that right there.
Mhm.
How much are they?
About $4.
Okay. Oh, that's a good price, because the Fruit Club sells them for about, I think, the same price.
Yeah, $4 or
So-
10 for $3.50 each.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's yeah. That's if you're going to do quantities of them. I know you guys got space, but it's
Not that much
Oh, okay.
space for trees unless
Ah.
we fence off part of the pasture, so.
oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So I guess that's that was all I had for this. So any questions?
You gotta just do it.
You have to do it, yeah. And you can do it on big trees. You can do it on little trees. So if you have a tree and you want to try a different variety, just go and nip off a branch, put on the one you like, and in a few years you'll have a fresh kind of apple. I've done a lot of apples and pears. I've done some cherries and plums. I've got actually one plum that's doing very well, but I've just found that the cherries and cherries in particular have gotten some sort of disease under the bark, and they bleed all kinds of sap and have these huge things. I don't even know what it is, but like I've kind of given up on the stone fruits in this climate, because unless you're doing it indoors. So, but it'll work on all of those. Have the personal experience on that.
Cool.
You know, when we bought our trees once, we bought, a couple of our apple trees are two types of apple on
Yeah.
one tree.
Right.
And then we bought the pear trees that, she called it the, fruit cocktail. So it actually was 3 different kinds of pears on one stock.
Mhm.
This one and this one and this one. So,
And that's the other, that gets into the pruning aspect, which we should, if anybody has fruit trees and they want to do dormant pruning, we're getting toward the end of the time for dormant pruning. By the end of this month, you should have your dormant pruning should be done. So I went over the payments the other day, and they have some really nice old apple trees, like really old ones. So we had a good time just getting those guys into shape, getting apple trees in particular and pear trees love to be pruned. So if you're getting like a lot of small apples off your tree and your tree's like really bushy, like you'll be amazed. You prune it, and the next season you'll get nice big apples. So, definitely worth doing. I'm happy to come over and help anybody who wants to prune their trees.
I was just gonna say, when are you available?
I'm retired, so
Okay.
just, I'm pretty
We'll
flexible.
text, we'll set it up with you then,
Yeah.
because we would love to have you
Okay.
come out and help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apple trees?
Beg your pardon?
I have a question about apple trees.
Yeah.
Do you regularly, like every year,
It depends on what your situation is. Payments had a lot of anthracnose in theirs, which is really something you don't want, and you need to be very aggressive in cutting out. You can see it in the bark. You have big sections of the bark that dies. You need to get rid of that and burn it because it spreads very contagious. So, for instance, if you have that, yes, you are. The main control in that case is pruning and burning. But you also want to put a fungicide on, and yeah, there's time to do that.
It seems like there's a lot of, not at the house we have now, but our last house, we had these, I don't know what it is, but it's worms or what it was.
Oh yes,
Were
yeah,
these
like
dark
apple
spots.
maggots, yeah,
And it's just like,
and they ruin your
nice
apples.
apples.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. Yes, there are controls for that. Not really familiar with. I mean, one of the things that the fruit club does is they have nylon stockings. Just like women wear. The nylon stockings, ankle high types, and they put those over the young apple, and that keeps all the worms out. But it's time consuming. But
You better have
they're
a
all.
dwarf tree. I can't imagine getting up.
And you gotta get to everyone, and you have an apple tree that's loaded with, and I have used that method experimentally, not on a large scale, and it really works. As I have one pear tree that for some reason the worms, I just love it, and I can never get good pears off it, and so I put just socks on. I didn't have any nylons, but I put socks on a couple of them, and not only were they completely worm-free, but they actually seemed to like it under there. They got nice and big, and it's like, oh, this is cool. They're Asian pears, so they're really tasty pear, and we never can eat them because they're always just loaded with worms. And I've got another Asian pear right next to it. Nothing, never gets a worm.
Interesting.
So, but they just like, it's this particular variety. It's called 20th Century, and I've got several of those trees, and it turns out that the worms like them.
That's one of the things about that catalog right there is I planted Bayburns and Fuji at my house
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. I've had a really bad situation with them. The trees are gorgeous. They've been pruned. They've been handled well. All of those things. And the apples come on them, and the leaves are nasty, and the apples are not good. I've tried everything, and then one of them, I think it's the Fuji, it had beautiful apples on it last year. The tree even didn't look bad, but they didn't ripen. So I ended up throwing away apples that were this big but green, and that was like clear into the fall. And I think our season's probably just not long enough or something. I don't know, but what I did is I'm going to pull them all out. All 3 of those trees, I'm pulling them out this year. And I ordered ones that are disease resistant, that are for our area. And they might not be my favorite apples, but I'm going to go that direction instead of trying to pick an apple I like in the store and then grow it.
Fuji's do well here, so I'm not sure what your problem
Well, last year was
was.
a horrible apple year, if you remember.
Yeah.
Nobody,
Oh, yeah.
well, very few people had apples last year. It was a
Right.
hard year.
The spring was terrible. It was cold and wet, and the bees didn't come out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was bad. Anyway, I would like you to explain to me and all of us the difference in the types of pruning. You talked about dormant pruning. If I understand correctly, pruning in the summer actually keeps your trees small, and pruning
Yes.
now actually encourages growth. Is that true?
To an extent, yes, yes. So that and that's actually all the extent of my knowledge about it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but yes, if you want to keep your tree small, you have to do summer pruning as well as winter pruning because yes, they. Especially if you're doing a heavy pruning like you generally will do on an apple or a pear, it'll go crazy. It'll say, "Oh, I'm missing some branches. I need to make up for lost time," and Yeah, they'll come, particularly those vertical ones that just stick straight up. Yeah, some people call them water sprouts, some people call them sucker. And yeah, you just, when you see those, as soon as you see them in the summer, just go out anytime. Doesn't matter. Whenever you see them, just get them when they're small and just nip them off with a hand pruner. And that will save you a lot of effort, because if you wait until the next winter, they'll be an inch around, and you'll have these giant things, and they're also taking a lot of the energy out of the tree that you want to go into the apples. So it's definitely summer pruning is definitely important as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we noticed the real difference, and we don't know anything about what we're doing.
Uh-huh.
We bought like a dozen trees from Costco because the price was great.
Oh yes,
About
they're
$8.
great price at Costco.
But I think we lost 2 or 3, and this is going to be year 3. We haven't had a single apple. And then last spring I bought just 2 of those apple trees that were grafted from Lowe's. I think they were, rather than $30 a piece or something, I think they were 60.
Mm-hmm.
And we got apples on both varieties on both trees year 1. And even the Granny Smith was big as a fist. Only a couple of them. But, so, do I keep those and give them 1 more year, or do I rip them all out and get some more of these Lowe's doubles and get something going a little quicker?
What you've got is the tree generally healthy and happy, or is it diseased?
Here's my pruner.
Yeah, and I don't know what I'm doing except for my brother Lance grafts and prunes trees too.
Okay,
Which is
so you learn from him.
Yes.
Okay.
But, so I know a tiny bit. And a lot of it is, like what kind of a shape do you want out of your tree as part of it? Like, do you want like 1 or 2 liters and blah, blah, blah. So for me, I do it a lot for picking. I don't want a tree to grow, like in eastern Washington, they prune very differently than they do here.
Absolutely.
And so I think about that when I'm pruning. But you obviously get rid of all the dead stuff, you get rid of all the suckers, you get rid of all that, and then you decide how many limbs do I want, and you don't want too many. Because you don't want a lot of small apples, you want so that's where my brain goes. So that's how I pruned his trees, not this year, but last year.
Right.
Actually it was,
I think you did
was
it.
it 2 summers ago?
I thought you did it this last summer, but I don't know if you got the trees that had the double apples.
No. I
So
don't
do you
think so.
think they're going to produce this year in year 3?
So maybe not, but if rather than cutting them down and having to start over from scratch, you can graft in varieties that you think are going to do better, and then you can you won't probably do that all in 1 year, although you could just cut the thing off. There's a way to do that, and put your 2 varieties that you want, or 3 or whatever, into that stump, and keep going from there. And that way you've got a head start, because you've got all that root system that took that tree a long time to grow that.
Soil is pretty rocky, isn't it?
It's rocky and it's clay, but we brought in a lot of good dirt for the 2-foot topsoil. But when you go further than 2 feet,
it's going to get its nutrition from the top, more like 1 foot.
Okay.
Trees will have many of them do have a tap root system that gets down there to anchor, but it gets its nutrition from the top.
Okay. Well, we'll just have you over since you're the town.
There you go.
Give me
Love
your
to
opinion. I don't
That's
mind
awesome.
starting.
love to come. But yes, you can. I mean, I took out a peach tree. I hate to take out trees that are good, but even at payments, they had one really old tree, but it was just completely diseased, and we took it out. So sometimes, you just gotta say this is not worth trying to save, and start over from scratch. So it's a judgment call. I can't,
You don't learn unless you try.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's my thing.
Yeah.
It's like I put in a peach tree and that I bought from this company here, and it was amazing. Came
Uh-huh.
up and I pruned it, and I pruned it like they said. It grew. It got big really quick. It was covered. It wasn't a peach tree. It's a nectarine tree. Covered in blossoms, and it got lots of fruit on
Yeah.
it. And then it just got completely destroyed with leaf curl. It was just, the tree was literally, it was horrible. I just pulled it out.
With what?
Leaf curl.
Oh yeah, that's what happened to mine. Yeah.
But the
Leaf
peaches,
curl's tough in this climate, and
The
I cut
peach
mine
tree,
down too.
they
It was
have-
very sad. Yeah.
I didn't cry.
Oh, yeah.
The book does.
I'm more
have-
sentimental.
She's a brutalist when it comes to pulling things
It
out.
is true. If it's not serving me well, it's going.
I'm planting mine in the greenhouse.
There you go. There you go. And the peach.
That will
they-
work.
They have a peach tree in there that is leaf curl resistant, and that I do have at home, and it's done well.
Oh,
Outside.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had a little bit, but not
Which one
anything you
was-
couldn't just pull off.
Which one was that?
I have to look at the book to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of varieties, this has about 30 varieties of apple. There are, like say, hundreds available, but they do list what diseases they're resistant to. Absolutely, growing things here get disease resistant. Scab. There's a few that just certain apples are just prone to getting, and you don't want to mess with that. Make sure you're getting a variety that is resistant to the fungus diseases in particular. They get different diseases in eastern Washington. I don't know what they are, but the fungal diseases are really tough to deal with. So
Has anybody here grown apples that they kind of go
yes, that's what Thomas was talking about.
called that kind of come up and they kind of grow up the side
Like
of
on
the
a
wall?
fence or on a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that what those
espalier is the French name for that.
Espalier?
Yeah,
Espalier.
yeah, espalier. Yeah. So Thomas, how did you do that?
That's how they came.
He actually just
Oh.
planted them in his
Okay.
orchard like the other trees.
Okay.
He has them, but they
Okay.
are that type of tree.
Yeah.
Those are the pear trees.
So it's a pruning style. So any tree can be grown that way.
And you have to keep pruning in that way, or they
Right.
revert back to the other way.
Think bonsai for fruit trees.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really fun. I mean, I've seen some cool designs. There's one called a Belgian fence where you grow those at an angle like that, but you put them close together so they all intersect, and you make diamond patterns. Yeah, so there's really different things.
Up against our sheds.
And it saves space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You just have a wall of apple instead of a huge tree.
Right.
Yep, or pear. Or now, when I say any tree, yes, but stone fruits, the plums and the cherries, are such vigorous growers that it's pretty hopeless to try to keep up with them. They just go crazy. And the more you prune them, they just go insane. So it doesn't really work with them. But the ones that the apples and pears that we grow here, yeah, any of those should be fine.
So if you planted,
And again, a dwarf is going to be easier than a full size trying to bonsai a full size tree. Yeah.
So if you planted like brand new trees, dwarf trees, apple trees, how long before you got fruit?
5 years. How long
Closer.
before you got yours?
Too long.
Actually.
Well,
two-
but you said
I-
your one you got 2 years, right?
They
This
don't
will be your
recommend,
fruit.
they recommend that
Okay.
you pull the fruit off and then let it go another year to strengthen the tree. But you can.
Which is biblical.
Yes, it is. You can literally get, I'm not saying a ton of fruit, but you can get some fruit in 3 years, for sure.
This will be our third year. What is this year? Third one.
And you are getting fruit on the
Well,
third
we
year.
got the ones from the ones I bought from Lowe's.
Yeah, right.
Year one.
Year one, there you go.
The grafted one.
Okay, so it's a big enough, right? So if your tree is big enough, it's been in the nursery long enough, and it's been there for 3 years, then yeah, when you bring it home, you get fruit the first year.
Another question. We live in the Tulies and we have lots and lots of deer out there and they love
Yep.
to eat anything they can get their
Yep.
little hands on.
So do we.
Um,
Yeah.
You guys do. Do they just eat, does deer eat just the fruit or do they eat like the trees?
Well, they eat everything, of course.
Yeah,
They love the fruit.
Sticks off.
They've even been on my fig trees. They climbed up and broke the branches. So
I planted
yes.
a tree once and a buck deer came in
Uh-huh.
and literally like did his horn thing right against that one tree and killed it. And it was
Yes,
just like,
yes.
it stunted it and it like only goes up like this.
Yeah.
Far.
And right, because it'll take the bark off. It's called girdling.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you have people who have weed eaters, it's very easy to kill a tree with a weed eater. You're just like, oh, I'm getting grass. No, you're actually getting a little bit of bark. You're getting that cambium layer, and tree's done.
Then
So.
they have like plastic, like wrap. that
Absolutely.
you can put around it so it
Yep,
protects.
I
things.
put wire around mine. You can,
Tubing of some sort around the base of it. Tubing, like it goes around.
yes, you can get that. And so for the deer, you can do the same thing. Just put wire mesh around it while it's growing, and they also have tubes just for growing them. Although they tend to be short. The ones they tend to be like 3 feet.
I thought
4
it had
feet.
tall enough fencing around it.
It wasn't tall enough. Yeah. I mean, deer fence is like 8 feet, right? But the thing is, once it gets tall enough, so you can go ahead and put in a nice tall one, and then once it gets tall enough, the deer actually do start leaving it alone because they tend to look for low stuff. So at least that's what I've
That's my
found.
experience too.
Yeah.
Hey, Lynn,
I can't get to the tall part because I can't
Thomas?
get in the bottom part.
what do you think about, so, we got the same greenhouse. and
Oh, nice.
one of
They're
the-
right. The caterpillar, yeah.
Yeah, and so longevity of actually having the fruit trees in a pot. I mean, I see kind of a plus is the fact that you can start with really good soil.
Yep.
It's always good soil.
Yep.
We don't want them to grow crazy, but now we're in the greenhouse early and getting things happening, like now. I mean, some sunny days, Stacy will go out there and bring a book and a lounge chair. It's like 30 degrees warmer in there. So,
Cool.
have you grown much in pots and for
Yes.
the long term?
Yeah, probably too long. They don't seem to thrive in pots.
For a long time.
A couple of years when 3 maybe 4 years when they're still
Okay.
couple inches around, and then after that they seem to slow down. Maybe it's my soil, don't know. So I don't have a ton of experience with that, but
You can plant it in the ground.
m-
You just,
Inside.
yeah, my brother, he grows peach trees, and that's what we're gonna do here, is we're gonna
Okay.
grow a peach tree out there. You just have to dig out enough so that, what he's talking about, that top foot or two of, you put some good soil in there, and then you just plant the tree right there at the end of your, if you do it at the end of your thing, then it's not where you all are, you wouldn't be able to drive your tractor through it anymore, but you could, anyway,
Yeah.
it's
I'm gonna plant mine
Right.
right down the center of my 30-foot.
right. So in the soil, in the native soil, not in a pot.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
Another option is, how you have raised beds, you could make a raised bed in there and put your tree in it. And then it wouldn't work on the side because it wouldn't have enough room or clearance. But if you didn't want it permanent, then it would just be like a giant pot.
Yeah.
My raised beds are about like a fence board high, and don't go in that, because they have all the big dirt in it.
What's the fence for?